During a tense diplomatic visit to Paris, Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional leader of Burkina Faso, confronts Emmanuel Macron with a vision of Africa's future that is bold, unapologetic, and radically independent from France's traditional influence. Macron, initially skeptical and defensive, is gradually disarmed by Traoré's raw honesty and unwavering commitment to his people's sovereignty. Over a series of private and public encounters in iconic Parisian locations, both leaders explore their roles in shaping a new, more equitable relationship between France and Africa. This story follows their journey in 10 emotionally charged chapters, reflecting the complexity of post-colonial ties, national pride, and personal conviction. Paris was shrouded in a pale, wintry mist as Ibrahim Traoré's motorcade approached the Élysée Palace. Inside, President Emmanuel Macron stood at the entrance, his expression carefully neutral. The press cameras flashed as the door of the armored SUV opened. Traoré stepped out, composed, dressed in his standard military fatigues, a stark contrast to the polished French officers around him. Macron extended his hand, and after the briefest hesitation, Traoré accepted it with a firm grip. They exchanged courteous nods, but the atmosphere was brittle. As they climbed the marble steps, aides and guards lining their path, neither man spoke. Inside, under the gold-leaf ceilings and crystal chandeliers, the room felt colder than the January air outside. For Macron, this meeting was a diplomatic necessity. For Traoré, it was a statement. Burkina Faso's future would be discussed not behind closed doors in Parisian salons, but on equal footing. The silence stretched as they took their seats, the legacy of centuries of complicated history between their nations pressing down on both. The first words exchanged were predictable, almost mechanical. Macron spoke of long-standing ties, mutual interests, and partnerships for stability. Traoré sat quietly, his eyes studying Macron not with deference, but with analytical calm. When Macron finished, Traoré leaned forward slightly. "We are not here to perpetuate the past," he said, his French clear but blunt. Macron's eyebrows arched slightly, betraying his surprise at Traoré's directness. "Burkina Faso has always been an important partner for France," he countered, but his voice lacked conviction. Traoré tilted his head. "A partner? Or a subordinate?" The aides in the room exchanged glances. Macron took a breath, realizing that this conversation was not going to follow the comfortable diplomatic script he had hoped for. Later, Macron suggested a walk through the palace gardens, hoping that a change of scenery might ease the tension. The winter air was sharp, their breaths visible as they strolled along the manicured paths. Traoré broke the silence first, unexpectedly personal. "I never wanted to lead a nation," he said, his gaze distant. "I was a soldier. I believed in service. Until I realized we were serving interests, not our own." Macron glanced at him, curious. Traoré continued, speaking of the corruption that had hollowed out Burkina Faso's institutions, of the frustration of watching foreign powers dictate domestic policy, of the ultimate decision to step up, not out of ambition, but necessity. "There was no one else," Traoré said simply. "My people deserved someone who would fight for them." For the first time, Macron saw beyond the image of the defiant military leader. He saw a man forged by circumstance, not by desire. That evening, in a private dining room set with impeccable French formality, the conversation took a sharper turn. Over the delicate clink of cutlery and the aroma of coq au vin, Macron attempted to emphasize France's support for Burkina Faso over the years, development aid, military assistance. Traoré listened in silence, then set his fork down. "Support," he repeated. Or control. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Macron swallowed, instinctively readying a defense, but something in Traoré's calm stare stopped him. My country has always been grateful for assistance, Traoré continued. But assistance that comes with strings is not generosity. It's leverage. Macron sat back, his appetite gone. For the first time that day, he realized this wasn't just a political encounter, it was a reckoning. The next morning, before their scheduled meetings, Traoré requested something unusual: a walk along the Seine. Macron, intrigued, agreed. They strolled quietly along the cobblestone pathways, the river flowing steadily beside them, Paris waking up around them with cyclists, vendors, and early commuters. Traoré broke the silence. You see a city of beauty, of history. My people see a city that once made decisions about their lives from thousands of kilometers away. Macron nodded slowly. And what do you see now? Traoré paused, watching the river. Possibility, but also responsibility. They continued walking. The barriers between them, though still present, felt thinner. Here, away from the grandeur of palaces, they were simply two men, both burdened by the demands of leadership, both grappling with histories larger than themselves. Back in the formal meeting rooms, the tone shifted again. Macron confronted Traoré about Burkina Faso's recent military and economic engagements with Russia and China. Are you turning away from France? Macron asked bluntly. Traoré did not flinch. We are turning towards our own interests. If France can respect that, we welcome the partnership. If not, we will find others who do. Macron sat back, stunned by the clarity and firmness of the response. He realized that the geopolitical chessboard was shifting in ways he had not fully grasped. The days when France's influence in West Africa was assumed were coming to an end. That evening, at Sciences Po University, Traoré gave a public lecture. Students packed the grand hall, their faces a mix of curiosity and admiration. He spoke of a vision for Africa not defined by dependency or reaction to former colonial powers, but by self-determination, unity, and strength. No nation should wait for permission to decide its future, he said, his voice resonant. Africa does not ask for charity. It demands respect. Macron, seated quietly at the back, watched as the students erupted in applause. In that moment, he realized Traoré was not just speaking for Burkina Faso. He was voicing a continental awakening. Their final meeting was brief, without cameras, in a discreet office at the Élysée. I underestimated you, Macron admitted, offering his hand. Traoré smiled faintly, but said nothing. They shook hands, not as conqueror and subject, but as two leaders who had finally seen each other clearly. There were no formal treaties, no grand declarations, just an unspoken understanding. The relationship between their countries had changed forever. From his office window, Macron watched as Traoré's plane lifted into the cloudy Parisian sky. The city hummed with its usual life, oblivious to the quiet shift that had just occurred. Macron remained at the window long after the plane disappeared, reflecting on the encounter. France's role in Africa could no longer be defined by past paradigms. If it was to endure, it had to transform, and for the first time, Macron felt ready to let it. Days later, standing at a podium in Brussels, Macron addressed European leaders. The hall was silent as he spoke. Our partnerships with Africa must be built not on old frameworks of influence, but on new foundations of respect and equality. In Ouagadougou, Traoré watched the broadcast with his cabinet. He allowed himself a rare, private smile. The world was changing, and both he and Macron had played their part in nudging it forward.